and he goes by he, him, and his pronouns. I actually found Dan on Instagram. His Instagram is at Transcend the Binary, and he has a great ability of providing content, humor, and real life experiences in very short snippets. And so I found him on Instagram. He often posts to his TikTok as well. Dan actually is the author of the book that we'll be speaking of tonight, but he is also a full-time housing attorney, and he is a part-time educator. And when he's not in court, he is typically either writing or speaking specifically to either events, issues, or situations that impact the trans and gender nonconforming community. And as I said, he is not only someone who works in the field, who is part of the community and really wants to raise the profile of the community so that people are more well informed and more equipped to be able to support the individuals in their lives. But he also does pro bono legal work for either name change as well as gender marker changes. He is a swimmer, an avid surfer, spends time with his family. And so I'm really excited to be able to have you hear him because it's been just a fantastic journey to see him, evolve on screen through social media. So without further ado, Dan, take it away.
Thank you for that introduction. Wow, that was a lot more than I expected, so I really appreciate that. So without further ado, we will start the presentation for the most part. So like my introduction said, I use he, him pronouns. I do not use neopronouns, but this is a topic that I've learned about through my interaction with other community members and research I've done on my own. So this is just going to be a brief, simple guide, basically getting into what neopronouns are. So at a starting point, we should talk about what pronouns are. So pronouns essentially functions like a noun. So they can refer to a person, a place, or a thing. And the most typical pronouns that most people are familiar with are binary gender pronouns. So that's he, him, his, or she, her, hers. And now more commonly, the catch-all gender neutral they, them, theirs. So typically a lot of people think that gender and pronouns equal the same thing. That is not necessarily true. You cannot tell what pronouns a person uses by looking at them. So that's the starting point of what a pronoun is. Moving on to what a neopronoun is. So neo, it means new, can also mean modern or recent. Neopronouns refer to any pronoun that is not the typical binary gendered pronoun he, him, she, her, or the common gender neutral they, them pronoun. Some very common neopronouns are included below, and the way these ones are said are a, er, e, em, and z, them. So these are all three very common neopronoun sets, and we'll get into that more as the conversation evolves, but this is just a starting off point of some very common neopronouns. So despite their name, neopronouns are actually not new at all. Neopronouns have been in existence long before any of us in this meeting came into being. So thon, which is a popular neopronoun, was first printed in 1884, hundreds of years ago. Then we have aer. They are a common neopronoun. They first were published in 1920s. Per pronouns are another popular neopronoun. They were in the 70s. And then we go into EM, and that's in the early 90s. So these are just some common neopronouns. And this is to show that neopronouns, despite the fact that they're just becoming more popular in popular culture in our lexicon, have actually been in existence for a very long time. We just didn't always have the ability to convey information as we do today, meaning the internet and online presences. So here is just a picture for everyone to kind of see. The first one is the definition of thon. This was in the dictionary, Second International in 1934. Here's their definition. They're stating that thon is a genderless pronoun of proposed genderless pronoun. And then on the right here, we have an article that this was actually published in 1972 in the Chicago Tribune. And this was an announcement of these pronouns. These are called her, his, or himmer pronouns. And so this was an announcement that made papers in 1972 about this principle that allegedly conceived of these neopronouns. So these are just two examples to show that they were in print long before today's time. So a lot of people, their main question is, why do we need neopronouns? If we have gender binary pronouns and we have they, them, why are we talking about neopronouns? So the main thing is that there is a misconception that all genders must fit into this catch-all, very tiny box of fitting they, them pronouns. Not all people feel comfortable using they, them pronouns, nor do they feel comfortable using binary pronouns, so he or she. So thus, this other pronoun or new pronouns have been created and resurfaced throughout numerous times in history. So just like there's numerous ways a gender can be expressed, there are numerous ways a person can refer to themselves, pronouns. And that's essentially how neopronouns have come into inception and folks using them. So they, them didn't necessarily resonate with them, nor did binary pronouns, and thus neopronouns evolved. So neopronouns are not unique to Western culture. There are many other cultures that have either gender neutral pronouns or multiple different pronouns. So for example, Sweden, since the 60s, has used a pronoun that is referred to as hen. And so this is not they, them. This is distinct from that. And it is not showing either male or female. This is a separate, distinct pronoun. Spanish cultures, el has been coming up. This has actually come up rather frequently in the last year or so. Since 2020, it's really exploded online. You can type in this pronoun on Google and you'll see a bunch of different articles that will come up from pretty reputable sources such as Washington Post and things of this nature. It's not just obscure internet blogs talking about these things. Turkish, they have a pronoun, it's o. Indonesia and other Asian cultures such as Malaysia, they use dia. And then this is just some of them. If you look into it further, I didn't want to spend our whole time going through every neopronoun in every culture, but this is just to show that this is not unique just to USA. There are many different populations and cultures throughout the globe that have found a need to use what we term a neopronoun, pronoun that's not they, them, or binary female, male, traditional pronouns. So this is going to be one of the first neopronouns that we'll explore. This pronoun is referred to as a Spivak pronoun, and that's because it's named after the person that created it and made it popular. So this pronoun came onto the scene in the early 90s. It was used by this person that was creating a tech manual, and they didn't want to have a specified gender. So this person came up with the idea to make a non-specified third gender pronoun. So when readers were using it, it wasn't favored of saying he as a default or she. So it appeared there, and then it really began to take off in 91. So in 1991, there was this very popular multi-user chat forum. So this is the beginning of chatbox and AOL era type stuff. So 30 years ago now. And this pronoun set actually at that time became the default pronoun. So when users would join the platform, instead of it selecting she or him, it would select he. And then you had to actively choose another pronoun. And there were actually a few other pronouns that they offered at the time. I didn't use the site because admittedly, I was not born at this time. I came 2 years later. So I wasn't on the site, but that's what I've heard. So then digging further, these pronouns have actually appeared in quite a few works since the 90s. And not just tech manuals, but we have some fiction novels, and I've named a few here for us to look at. Doom's Patrol, there was a book about crime and passion in the virtual world that was loosely based off of this 90s chat platform that we were talking about just a few minutes ago, and some things that occurred on that. And then it was actually adopted into some electronic writing center and tech manuals, and then some more books about virtual communities, as this was kind of one of the first, and this pronoun was included. So it gained a lot of popularity in it being included as a default pronoun for this very popular chat room. And this pronoun is still used today. So this is still a popular pronoun that people use. And we'll go through. So here I've just listed the way that I like to think of neopronouns is kind of like if you've ever taken another language like Spanish, like conjugations, how it will change just a very little bit, the last 2 letters or something of that nature. So we don't necessarily have to go through each one, but I like to demonstrate for people because each version of it, just like we have him, his, he, there's different versions of pronouns, but they all mean the same thing. When we're thinking about it, we're all referring to that one individual. So these are the different versions of Spivak pronouns and the way that they would be used in a sentence. So for example, you could say, he went to the march instead of the person's name, or he or she. That's where that would come in. And if you go through, you can see there are different ways it's used in each sentence. It may appear very intimidating at first, but I assure you, just like any other thing in life, if you actually take the time to sit with it and practice, and by practice, I mean looking at it and just going through a few sentences in your head with different versions of it for 5-10 minutes here and again, it will start to become second nature, particularly if you know someone in your life that uses neopronouns. It should certainly be something that you should practice and get familiar with. So these are just some ways it's used. And here I have how it's said. So the main barrier that I've seen with neopronouns when talking with other people is that, okay, I know how to read it, but how do I say these? And so I spend a lot of time on YouTube and talking to people that use these pronouns to figure out how they're pronounced. So E is just like the English alphabet E. EM is just like the letter N. Ear is like the human body part, ear. And so although they look pretty foreign, these words are not that hard to say. When we take the time to put in the effort and just go through them and memorize. And I'm not saying be perfect the first time, because I don't think that's going to happen with anyone. But it is not impossible to learn. So that's hope. Here is the next neopronoun I want to talk to everyone about. This is Z. So it's spelled with an X, but said like the letter Z. This is a very common neopronoun. In 2020, and I actually have a link at the end of this, there is a very great organization. They do what's called the Gender Census, and it's collected from a bunch of different countries. And every year they do polls on different pronouns, and respondents can write what pronouns they use and things of that nature. So in 2020, they found that this was the most popular pronoun among respondents, with 7.4% of individuals who indicated that they don't use he or she or they, them, that they use, in fact, these pronouns, Z pronouns. And 7.4 doesn't seem like a lot, but that's a pretty big number of individuals out of a large sample that are saying that this is the pronoun they use. And so Z pronouns actually came into existence. They were first published by a Unitarian Universalist named Don Richter in his UU publication. And so these were for a genderless third person use. And so it was basically to imply nothing about the gender of the person. And so that's how this came into existence in 73. And since then, they have appeared in numerous different sources and publications. So again, this is the form of how you would use these pronouns. So instead of saying she went to the bakery or he went to the bakery, you could say Z went to the bakery. It's 2 letters, just like he. Or them. Instead of saying I met her there, you would say I met them there. So it might seem challenging at first, and it is, but it is doable when you break it down to see how these are used in sentences. So again, these are some pronunciation tips. So Z, although it's spelled with an X, is pronounced like the English alphabet letter Z. Them rhymes with English words them and stem. So I just put a Z in front of it when I think about it. And so here are some different ways that the words are said. You can always take the time to review this at any point and go over it yourself if you'd like. Also, if you look online, you will be able to find YouTube videos, so not a lot of print of how to pronounce the words, but a lot of videos online that are free for different neopronouns. So if you encounter someone that uses a neopronoun, which would be any pronoun that's not she, he, or they, you will know that it's a neopronoun because it will be any of those, despite any of those 3. You can look it up and there will likely be at least one person online talking about how to say it. Okay, so the main thing about all this is to practice. So with each neopronoun, they're used differently. So it's not the catch-all, like every time you say, you refer to me, for example, you would use he, him. But when you use neopronouns, you need to be aware that there are different versions of that pronoun for each way it would be used. So that's kind of why it was broken down in those different formats for each individual, which can be tricky. And so even with each person, if you meet someone that uses a different pronoun from what you typically use, you should ask that person how to use it if you're unfamiliar. Okay, so some final notes. Ultimately, when we're talking about pronouns in any form, whether it's neopronouns or binary pronouns or gender neutral they, them pronouns, when we use pronouns, it's about respecting the person that uses them. It's not about whether we understand or it makes sense to us or any of that. It's about respecting that person's choice that they are using that pronoun and that's what they want to be called. So some common things that I've heard as to why people use neopronouns is that they are intentional. They feel like a pronoun that is comfortable and safe with that person. Additionally, people that have used neopronouns use them because they feel that the common language we use, so he, she, and they, is not adequate to fill the void and present their gender. They also provide more flexibility. So a lot of times we, people that use neopronouns, they don't want their pronoun to correspond to a certain gender. And despite what we think, we actually do this a lot. We talk about people without using a gender. For example, if someone leaves an object, we'll say, someone forgot a coat or something like that. We won't say she forgot the coat because we don't know, right? So that's just an example. And so that really, in a nutshell, is what neopronouns are and why they're used. On this last slide here, I just included some more resources. My book would probably be one of the most comprehensive. I think there's one other book that does talk about some neopronouns. Then additionally, Google. Then I've linked here the Gender Census. So this is, I think, a really helpful resource for anyone. It's open to anyone in pretty much every country, I think, that has internet access. It's like hundreds of countries, and they take polls on genders, on pronouns, on what people are comfortable with them being referred to in terms of trans versus transgender and things like that. So it may be of interest to people regardless of pronouns. If you have someone that is not gender conforming in your life. Then additionally, there's this organization called My Pronouns, where they do a lot of work and articles about neopronouns and binary pronouns alike. So they have a lot of educational articles and a lot of opinion pieces and interviews and things like that with different people that use different pronouns and things like that. So that might be something for people to check out, or just Google. If you ever have any questions, I guarantee there is someone on a blog somewhere talking about it for you. So that's basically all I have in terms of my presentation for you all tonight.
Thank you so much, Dan, for leading us through your presentation. I think it's really informative. The one thing that I really want to reiterate is that your book is an amazing resource, just as you laid it out in the presentation. The book, I have it right here. It's a 60-page book, and it's really well organized, where you have, exactly like Dan did in the presentation. So you have the pronoun, the brief history of the pronoun, then how to use it in a sentence, and then how to pronounce it. And you have that for probably 40 or 50 different pronouns. And then there's also a foreword that Daniel wrote about really just explaining the why, as well as the fact that it's really, as Dan said in the presentation, it's about respecting the individual and finding, now that they've found, a pronoun that really feels like home to them. And so I really like what you said, actually, on the fact that it's not whether or not I understand the pronoun that's being used, or that I think it's grammatically correct or whatever. It's really about listening to the pronoun that the person in front of you wants you to use, and using them and learning how to use it, stumble through it and practice. But it starts with listening and respecting them fundamentally.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So this book can be found on Amazon.